Turtle Island. Could we start there? I think Turtle Island is a term that is growing in popularity, but is it correct? Is it right? How do you see the usage of that term?
When I began to structure rediscovering Turtle Island, I began with our creation story. Everything begins with the beginning, and oftentimes referred to as the Earth diver myth. Of course, that's an anthropological term. I don't agree with the term myth, unless you want to call all of Judaism, Christianity, and studies of Islam a myth as well, then we can start there. But it's one of the stories that I heard from both the Cherokee side and on my Siouan side, different variations from the Omaha, from the Osage, some of our other relatives within our language family. And in essence, it summarizes the journey of the souls from the Seven Sisters constellation that the Greeks called Pleiades, and they journey through the dark rift of the Milky Way and then guided by the morning star to here. And when the first stars' souls came here, they took the form of four animals. And eventually, one of them dives down into the water-covered planet and brings up the primordial clay upon which turtle sacrifices itself and puts the earth on its back, and the earth is born from there. And I discovered in my research that that story is shared by many of the indigenous peoples of North America. Not all. Others have different creation stories, but it's common amongst the Siouan-speaking peoples, the Algonquin-speaking peoples, and the Iroquoian peoples. And they all have different variations. In my travels around indigenous country over the years, I would sometimes share that story and find that there was a lot of commonalities, but yet a lot of differences. And along the way, I had many people correct my version of the story, as they have different variations of it. And people would say things like, "That's pretty good, Taylor. You're a good storyteller, but you got one of the animals wrong," or "You forgot woman who fell from the sky." And I became very curious about why there were so many variations of the same story. And in my research, I found a Russian scholar who specialized in studying the story, and came to discover that it's still in Siberia today, and there's multiple variations. So pick your point in time of when indigenous peoples came out of the Eurasian Plat, whether it be across the Bering Strait or waterways at least 15,000 years ago with the footprints in White Sands, New Mexico. That pushes the clock back to around 23,000 years ago. That story is at least as old as the migrations. And so we're talking about a story that is well over 10,000 years old, at least 15, and who knows how much further back it goes. So if that story is coming out of Siberia, it's either referring to Siberia or the Eurasian continent, depending on what point in the Ice Age we were in whenever that story originated. But it's got to be one of the oldest stories in the world. The language about Turtle Island, because so many of the tribes share that story here, people often think of it as meaning North America. But what it really means is the earth and its origins.